Well, hey there, everybody. This is Steve, and I'm looking forward to this today. And I'm going to go ahead and open up our thousand hour eyes for scent work here in just a moment. And just want to give you a little background. This process was born of a lot of failure and a lot of mistakes. And those of you who know me know that I've been a cop of one flavor or another now for over 45 years. And almost most of my time is in canine. I started out in 1975 as a military police canine handler. I wish somebody had taught me this approach, but it didn't hit me until halfway through my career. And you'll see later in the presentation, I owe great debt to Professor Stephen McKenzie, who is a PhD animal behaviorist with the State University of Cobleskill in New York State. And he's one of those guys that's kind of really interesting because he is 100% pure egghead academic. He is brilliant. And in addition, he's also a certified master police dog trainer with the North American Police Work Dog Association, which has some pretty stringent standards. And I had the privilege of working with him at some of the police canine conferences with Bob Eden. And I couldn't be more excited about what I'm about to share with you because it came as a product of an accident. A bunch of us were instructing at the United States Police Canine Association National Trial in Boulder, Colorado. Professor McKenzie was there with us. And at the end of night training one night, we're all sitting around as instructors in the dorm rooms at the university having pizza and beer. And as cops are wont to do, they complain. And we were sitting there complaining about how these handlers couldn't read their dogs. It was just like these dogs were throwing up these neon signs saying, hey, he's over here, come, and handlers were oblivious to it. And we'd whine and complain. And then out of all the din of all these cops talking, the egghead chimes up, Dr. McKenzie, and he says, yeah, it probably wouldn't be so bad, except there are only 8 scent work indicating behaviors. And at that point, we all turned on him. Man, we all like, 8? There's more than 8. What are you talking about, Doc? I can't believe you're saying that. It's just, you're crazy to think that there's only 8 scent work indicating behaviors. And he then, on a napkin, scrawled out the 8 scent work indicating behaviors that you're going to see as we go into this. And that forever changed the way I read my own dogs, but it also cut by more than half the time it takes me somebody else to read their dog. And in fact, for some of the clients that I've had who've been working on their urban tracking titles, their variable surface tracking, VST here in the United States, they said that as much as the training to improve their dog's hard surface work, learning how to read their dog made the difference. And they learned really the important part about the division of labor there is between the handler and the dog. And so without any further ado, the only thing I'm going to ask at this point is if we've got the screen up, can you see the screen that we have? Well, I'm going to assume that you can because it says my screen is sharing, and we'll go from there. So the first thing I'm going to say about this, wait a minute, is that this gets a lot easier if you use video because video has a couple of advantages. One is it actually sees what happens, not what we thought happened, not what our faulty memory tells us we thought happened, but what actually happened. And you can go over it over and over again. And I'll talk about the advantages of that ability to go over it multiple times because it allows you to parse your video in a way that a training exercise in a way that you can't without it. In addition, you also get the opportunity to indelibly etch what you see into your mind's eye by repeating it. So remember, as we get into the video piece, we're not going to do the full stuff because that actually is part of a full day workshop where we do nothing but this session, but we'll give you a snippet of what goes on and how the process works. Boy, we got more people coming in. All right. So as I talked about Steve McKenzie's 8 scent work indicators, basically one of the things that I would like you to do by the time you're done with this, consider building a scent work indicator database for your dog, a way for you to track what are meaningful signals and what are not, or what are the most meaningful, what are the most reliable indicators the dog is in or out of scent. And we'll show you how to do that exactly. Before we get carried away, I'm speaking about scent, but this also applies to dogs that work odor. But if you take a look at Scent and the Scenting Dog, which there are newer books out, and there's some really good scent books, but bang for the buck, page for page, there's probably no book that has more information per page than Scent and the Scenting Dog by William Syrotuck. And I'm lucky that his widow, Jean Syrotuck Whittle, gave permission for me to use this for educational purposes, training people who work with scent dogs. I came into the search and rescue field in Washington State as a kid, as he was finishing up his career. So I didn't really get as much chance to interact with him, but I interacted with the people who were trained by him. And I got to tell you, it set me up for success moving forward in the police canine community after that, because they understood that this is not a solid thing. You know, people will talk about a scent cone, but if you take a look at this screen right here and you look from the lower left to the right, you see this plume of smoke moving across the screen. That is the way scent moves. It follows the principles of fluid dynamics. It will eddy, it will curl back, it will create voids, it will have high pressure zones and low pressure zones that are all predictable according to the laws of physics. Now, sometimes the variables are there's so many variables that it's hard to predict, but you can get the general things pretty clear if you know what you're doing and you think about it. With that being said, let's move on to the next thing. And that is the bread and the butter of this, McKenzie's 8 scent work indicators. Again, Dr. Stephen McKenzie came up with this, and he thought about it for a long time before he brought it up. And as I said, you know, he wrote this down on a napkin in a crowd of canine instructors at a seminar as we were all sitting around afterwards. And after everybody kind of went up and we were cleaning up, I snagged the napkin because I knew I wouldn't remember it the next day. And lo and behold, you know, I kept that napkin and I put it to work. I stayed in touch with Steve for a bit afterwards. He helped me understand it some more. And hopefully we can get this through to you in a way that will be easy for you to understand. So the first scent work indicating behavior is pull. And we'll talk about each of these in depth as we go through here. And then there's nose height, tail carriage, breathing, cadence, circling, crabbing, and then head swing. And as we talk about each of these things, we get into depth, we're going to look for the observable, measurable qualities of each one of those that you can use to tell you what your dog is doing, whether the dog is in or out of scent. And as you look at this, don't think that a specific behavior always means the dog is in or out of scent. You're really looking at a scent work exercise as a dynamic, ongoing event, and you're looking for the changes that scent as a stimulus prompts in your dog's behavior. Never forget, you're looking for changes. I can remember also that, well, let me back this up for a second. It's also unique to your dog. So when you build the scent work indicator database, you're building one for your dog. In the state where I work in the United States, we do not certify police canine handlers. The state also does not certify police dogs. What it does certify are canine teams, because the operating philosophy of the canine culture in our state is that the team is an integrated whole, and that one without the other really serves no function, at least as a canine, as in terms of canine. And that's really important for you to wrap your head around, because even though the two are judged as a whole, they're judged as a whole because they dovetail where they're both individually strong. The dogs are great scent locators. They can process scent information in a way a human being can't. Human beings have the capacity for abstract thought and reasoning. And if that dog gives you an indication at a point where it is not at source, but it is where the strongest concentration of odor is, and that can happen, and I can set that up for you on any day of the week, and it will have dogs going at the completely opposite end of a room all day long. It's pretty easy to set it up. All you have to realize is that that dog's not wrong when it's the other end of the room. That dog is telling you right. And if you force it to walk away from the scent it's strongest, to go to where the scent is weaker, and then dummy up an alert by having someone make a noise or something like that, you're teaching the dog, don't pay attention to your nose, don't trust your nose, trust me, I know better than you do. And then later on, you're going to find that you have a dog that's become dependent upon you. The biggest thing that gets in the way of really effective scenting dog work are handlers that have unknowingly created a dependency in their dog. So as we move through this, and we're talking about these indicators, pay attention to the roles that we have here. Your job is to be an observer and to watch the changes in the dog. So the first is pull. Now, if you take a look at this video right here, this is Ann Tyson and her dog Diesel. Ann came to me as a VST competitor who had twice taken the VST test and hadn't passed, which is not unusual because our pass rate at this time in the United States was about 6%, maybe up to 9% by the time she worked with me, but still under 10% pass rate for the VST test. And as you can see, as she's working here right now, her dog Diesel, and I'm going to pull this video up. You can see the pull. Now you see a little slack in the lead. He starts to actually go off and check the sides, circle around, check the other side. You noted that she's managing the lead. She's maintaining her line, but she also manages her lead as he comes back. Ann is an excellent lead handler, by the way. She makes sure that she doesn't get in the way of her dog's work, and she makes sure the lead doesn't either. And you see that she's letting him go. He comes back around. He figures out where we're at, and he's back at it again. All those moments of slack and tension that Ann had to manage, and you see that he's moving along up there. Now, I'm going to go ahead and exit this video and then come back in again, because the last time we did this, the videos would stop the presentation. So if the presentation's still up, I tell you what, Louise Willis, if you're there, can you wave? Because I see your screen. Can you wave? Is the presentation back up? All right, we're good to go. So the first thing you have to realize, pull can be measured in a couple of different ways. The first is intensity, how hard the dog is pulling. I'm also going to tell you that intensity can also be one of the most deceiving ones. I'm sure nobody in this group has ever had one of these, but there are some tracking dogs that when they get to the edge of the road, in other words, they track it across a field and then there's a road crossing, they will pull harder going across the road than they were when they were on the grass. Why? Because they want to get to the other side where it's easy. And instead of working the road, they want to get to where they can see some grass and see if they can find the scent from there, and then go on. You'll see there are other times in which dogs' intensity can be deceiving, but generally speaking, looking for that nice, smooth, steady intensity of whatever it is for your dog is probably a more reliable indicator than that. So always be aware where the changes in intensity are. Frequency, in other words, is that pull steady, like I was saying, or is it something that has kind of a staccato quality to it? Is it the dog starting and stopping? Is it changing its direction a little bit that actually changes the way that intensity feels? Because that's part of the vector of the pull also. How long? Do they pull only to get across the road and then all of a sudden their nose is down and everything is about focusing on that? Then you could probably bet that they weren't actually tracking across that road. And as I said, vector, the direction of the pull is the other piece you want to look at. And you notice that as Diesel started to slow down, she could feel the change in his pull and adjusted her gait and prepared her hand to take up the slack of the lead as Diesel then first went to the left, circled around, and then went to the right. She knows her dog. She knows that he is checking himself to see whether he's on or off. This is pretty weak scent working on a pavement parking lot in the late evening or late afternoon, early evening hours. You can see the shadows are kind of long. So that pavement's had plenty of time to warm up during the day. Things don't settle easily, and skin oils and sweat evaporate quickly. So it changes the the structure of the scent, the components in a way, and he just wanted to check and make sure he was following the strongest path he had available to him. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is nose height. In this exercise here, you're going to see a dog working a building search for a criminal suspect in a warehouse type space. As he's working, I would like you to watch very closely where his head is and see where you see changes in the height. By the way, while that handler's saying, where's he at? Do you think that dog needed that? Shut up and let the dog work. As you notice, as he comes out, almost every time he comes out from the pallets, his head is at a natural carriage. And then all of a sudden, as he moves through that, you see him, that brief swing at the very end of that video. I'm going to play it again, and I'm going to get us right here. You see headed a bit high as he came around there, and that's not far from where the alert was. Let's go back and look at this. He comes around, see a little bit high, but he goes and checks himself, checks the environment around. Everything else after this, except when he's trying to poke through a hole in the pallets, almost everything is at a natural head height. Then fast forward to here, and you see him come around. He's going at that speed, and this is where he had the head swing up a little bit before. Boom, there it is. He's confirmed it for himself. And you see other scent work indicating behaviors change too. So you're looking for the relative changes in his nose height. First, in relation to his body. Where is that going? And so for me, what I look at is where's that dog's natural carriage? Different dogs are going to carry their head in a different height. This particular dog carried it in such a way that maybe the nose, the base plane of the nose was probably 4 inches above the tops of his shoulders, or maybe 2 or 3 inches above the tops of his shoulders. Pretty steady right there. On that first pass around underneath those pallets, and on the second one, when he finally came back around it, that head picked up just a couple of inches, if that much, on the first one, and then more on that last one. So I look for that change in relation to his own body. Then, particularly for tracking dogs, I look where it is in relation to the ground. If you notice when he was going through that space, oh, right, by the way, are the slides up? Louise, if the slides are up, wave for me. They are? Good. Thumbs up. All right, good. Then you're going to look for where the dog's nose in relation to the ground, and also vertical surfaces, because you notice as he's going through space in there, he's going to adjust to get himself through in between the paint cans and the other things stacked up in the warehouse. But the other thing to think about too, particularly for tracking dogs, when you track along a building and someone walks along there, a building, if it's acting as an obstruction to the wind, can create a kind of a tunnel set, a circular airflow that goes along the base of the building, along between it and the ground. That can cause scent to be deposited along the lower edges of that vertical surface of the building. And you'll see dogs swing their head between the ground and then along the wall. Police canine handlers will see this more often than will sport trackers, because sport trackers are usually out in the middle of the building. But we're looking for people who are trying not to be seen. So they hug up against things big enough to hide a human being. They run close to buildings. They run along hedgerows, and you'll see scent collecting there in a way that the dog will process not only the ground disturbance, but also what's going on along that surface. If you're a sport tracker, take a look at what's going on out in the field when your dog is tracking somewhere near a landmark along there, and you may find that that's going to happen, particularly for American VST trackers, because those tracks can be set up in a kind of a mixed media environment. By definition, they have a vegetative component, then their hard surface, and a mixture of surfaces there. They go along buildings like at college campuses and places like that. So it's very similar to police canine in that regard. Watch where that dog's head height changes. That nose will pull the head in the direction that it's going on. This is very similar to the head swing, but you're looking in this one largely for changes in elevation. And also look how it changes from moment to moment. If you see over time that this dog's nose is gradually moving in one direction or the other, there's probably some stimulus that's causing it. And it's probably going to be scent. And we look for that and we try and leverage that. Every time you work a scent problem, whether it's an area search or a building search or a track, you should keep a mental map of your space as you go through it, making note of where you see changes in the dog's behavior. Because later on, if you've got to come back and check something, knowing those spots gives you a base point to start checking on either side or around so that you can see that, make sure that dog processes everything that's available there. I generally like to let the dogs work, and if they don't come up with something, I pay attention to where those changes are, come back and check them, and that's where the money is, because you come up with people that you wouldn't otherwise. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is tail carriage, and you're going to take a look at a dog doing a drug detection exercise, and pretty high energy dog, a little wild and a little frantic, and it's being restrained by the search pattern process. But watch this tail carriage, particularly in relation to top carriage and how it changes. Okay, let's go back and take a look at that again and watch. So you have kind of a wide, gentle sweeping tail right here, wide sweeping tail that's at the top line or a little bit above. Coming up here, tail is still kind of wide, sweeping, and then relax. Now that you see the pace come up, it freezes for a second, and then the frequency of the wag gets higher as she prepares to sit. But what you're looking for is that brief pause. Boom, you see it there also. The pause is not long at all. And it's really easy to miss. But when you're doing that mental track map, that's what you're looking for, is that change. Now, for this dog, it's a pause before it does. For other dogs that I've seen, their change will be something where the tail will accelerate. Hers didn't accelerate until she's preparing to sit. She said, as the arousal goes up and the tail starts to wag because she knows she's going to get paid, that's where hers come up there. But when she was focusing on what she was doing, and it's almost as if, I don't want to be anthropomorphic here, and I don't want to try and read inside the dog's head, but it's almost as if when she decided, wow, I'm going to really focus on what's going on here at the pointy end of my body, the back end kind of said, okay, we'll let you focus on that. We'll stop doing stuff for a moment. And that's what you're looking for. That particular dog's change. Your dog will be different. So again, we were looking at how the frequency of the wag. In other words, how many wags per minute. You're basically looking at the rate. You're looking like that tail, like it's the arm on a metronome going side to side. But not only frequency, you're also looking for amplitude, how wide that swing is. Frequency and amplitude are dictated by the animal's emotional state and the degree of tension it's under. I mean, if you think about it, for that, when the dog's muscles in the back start to tighten up, they're at the base of the tail. That tightening at the back end of the body will decrease the amplitude. And usually it tends to increase the frequency, or it makes it stop. It's one of two things. It either stops or it will get a tighter wag. We saw that for a bit with the dog that was doing the building search, where there was a change of frequency, and you'll get a chance to see that dog again. But you're also going to look for how that amplitude and frequency play off each other. For that dog, Ayla, it was very simple. She had that momentary freeze so that the wide sweeping was there. It'd get a little faster. Then there was a freeze. And then it would get faster and tighter as she prepared to get her reward. And you're also going to look at curl, because again, that's a function of tension. As the back muscles tighten up and the muscles, the small muscles at the top of the tail starting to tighten up, the tail will curl up. And it varies for dogs, what that means. Probably one of the most frustrating events of my life was going to court and listening to a canine handler from another agency testifying in court about his dog when his dog found a suspect. And he spoke in general terms saying, he's trying to sound really official. So when the trained police canine dog locates a criminal suspect or is in proximity to said suspect, his tail will curl up over his back in a question mark-like fashion, indicating proximity to the perpetrator. And I'm like, first off, speak English. Second of all, that's your dog. Don't say that about the police canine or all police canines. Talk about your dog. Your dog does this. Every one of you that's listening to this, every dog that you're going to see here is not your dog. You're going to have to figure these things out for yourself. But the basic 8 scent work indicating behaviors are manifested by every dog, some to more one extent or another. But it's important to realize that you can learn your dog's unique scent work indicating behaviors, and you can build a systematic approach to how important each one is. So the next thing is breathing. Now, before we start talking about breathing, think about this. We're asking our dogs to process scent. They do that through their nose. If a dog is working hard to process scent, and for example, sniffing, a dog, when it sniffs, can exchange air up to 300 times per minute. It's going to vary, but that's the fastest it's been recorded. Remember that in so doing, that means they're taking very shallow breaths. That breath is being done for the purpose of processing scent information, not for supporting the physiological activity the dog's going through, the demanding work of searching and then processing that scent. It's just bringing in samples for detection. And at that point, it's trying to maintain that. So if a dog is engaged in a physiologically demanding activity, such as working a scent problem, its mouth is going to be open, it's panting because that's the way it cools itself. If that dog all of a sudden changes its breathing, closes its mouth, there's usually a stimulus that will trigger it. And we'll talk about the differences between scent and other senses that can trigger it. Well, so you're going to listen for things too. It's not just about watching it. It's about listening for things like the popping of turbinates. Those are the cartilaginous channels inside the dog's nose that create much more surface area to be covered with olfactory cells that gives them that really sensitive nose that we're looking for. But it also slows down the air going in, gives it more time in there for processing too. Also, those mucous membranes have mucus on them, obviously, and that helps moisten that scent and make it easier to process. So when you hear a dog sniffing so rapidly that you can hear this clicking sounds, almost like a set of castanets, muted castanets, that's the turbinates popping as air goes by them so much that you get that little that popping noise. Also look for mouth closure, because as I said, if they're going through that physiologically demanding work of searching and something stimulates them to close their mouth, that's important. Make note of that moment when they decide they're going to close their mouth, because that's the moment where that dog is making the choice. What's coming through my nose for scent is more important than taking air, getting down my gullet to help me cool myself down, and getting air across my tongue to help me cool myself down. You're also going to look at the rate. And when you watch the things about the rate of breathing, it's really hard to see this in many dogs, but the easiest way to do it is to watch their rib cage. And in fact, when you watch these videos, this video and another one later on, you can see the rib cage and as it's moving, and you'll see them change their rib cage movement. Won't get as deep, and it'll get faster when they decide they're going to start sniffing. So it's an important thing to look for. So take a look at the video here. And you can hear the sniffing there. You see that you have other scent work indicating behaviors change, but watch. Can't hear him breathing now, really. And a little sniff, and then more active sniffing. I'll shut my mouth on this one so you can hear it without me. So when you're watching that too, now this time, look at it one time and watch the dog's rib cage. Watch it as he's walking along the wall this way. So you're going to be looking at the right side of the ribs. And as he comes around and he starts to make his turn, watch what happens to the rib cage, particularly when he's working down there in the base of the corner there. If you look right behind the harness, you can see the flank right behind the ribs starting to pulse with the sniffing as he's working hard to those, you know, because essentially you've got to squeeze the bellows smaller but faster to get that sniffing motion. So reading a scent working dog isn't just a matter of using your eyes. You also got to listen for that sound. There's plenty of handlers that's been working, as particularly canine handlers, because you got to scan the environment for threats as you're working. You're not just concentrating on your dog. You hope that your backup officer is going to do it, but it's natural for human beings to look around and check the environment as they're going through a dangerous place. And more than one handler I know was doing that when all of a sudden they heard their dog sniffing and they turned around, and lo and behold, they're getting close to a suspect, or they're on a piece of evidence or something important about the track. That's why you have to keep all your senses online and be fully attuned to them as you go through any scenting problem. Cadence, many people will call this gait. I'm using Dr. McKenzie's language. Steve first said cadence on his piece of paperwork. I know a lot of other people prefer to use gait because for dog people and horse people, it is standard language. So feel free to call it gait instead. This is a video of a track that was set up for a court case in which the court demanded at the defense's, or actually the opposing counsel's request, to have a demonstration track created. So this is a training track. The handler knows the route, just let the dog do his thing. This is the way we used to track in the old days, by the way. We started our dogs in cemeteries. You'll notice this is a cemetery because they have built-in tracking stakes. Go 4 headstones, take a right, take 3 headstones, take a left, and go hide behind the monument. Excuse me. But as this dog works, watch his cadence change. So he's starting out at the start of the track at the base of the fence right here. And you'll see he's at a bit of a bunny hop canter there for a little bit. Then he goes to a trot, little trot there, picking it up. And then now we're on from a canter to a full gallop. Yes, that's the way we used to do it. Oops, wait a minute, bad guy. So looking for those changes in gait, it's more important as we play this again. You see him as he starts, he's looking like this, and then all of a sudden you see the gait change from that smooth trot. You see his feet start to get a little staccato. There's a stutter step as he's trying to process and he gets less linear in his motion. Right here, you see he's going, there's more casting side to side, another cast side to side here before he commits to the direction, and he's off. Grab the bad guy, bring him out from the bushes. All right. So you're always going to be looking at, generally speaking, how fast the dog is moving forward, because tracks aren't really a linear event, but they are a connect the dots event. So you're moving from one dot, one scent point to another as you go. You're looking at the stride count. In other words, if you take a look at the speed, how many strides does it take to do it? I can make the same forward speed of 3 miles an hour at one step, that lasts for 18 to 24 inches. Or I can make 3 to 4 miles with a lot of little very fast steps in little baby steps. So stride count is something you're looking at. Is that dog starting to shorten up his stride? If so, it's processing more in that spot a lot of times. Also start looking for Is that movement linear, or are they starting to zigzag? Do you start to see a shifting of weight from one side to the other as it goes through that movement? Again, the shifting of weight is usually because it's processing sense saying, oh, stronger here, weaker there, stronger here, weaker there, as they move back and forth playing this hot and cold game. Also look for that moment in which the dog will have an inchworm back, where the back rolls up. That's where there's a difference between the front and the back of the dog. When the back all of a sudden is just pushing and driving, and the nose catches something that gets his attention, you can see that dog's back kind of arch up. Let's see, I actually think it happens here with Donner in this one. So he's moving along, he's got a steady speed here, and then all of a sudden, boom, hits the turn, and there's a brief moment as just before he makes that left turn, or pardon me, that right turn, right there. As he's making that turn, the back roaches up. You'll see it again as he hit that zigzag before he flattens out and he goes that way. A lot of these things are subtle. I don't know if anybody here is a scent work instructor, but if you have been a scent work instructor, you probably have that experience. You're out teaching somebody how to work their dog, and you go like, and you'll say, see that? And they'll go, see what? Because to the unpracticed eye, they don't know it. And that's why this presentation is called 1,000-Hour Eyes. It's actually borrowed from the ethological community, the people who take ethrograms. People like Diane Fossey looking at gorillas, Jane Goddard looking at chimps, and Eduardo Fernandez looking at all sorts of different animals. Creating ethograms is a skill in which, they are not creating, but filling them out. So you have a collection of the animal's behaviors written in a code on a sheet, and every time you see that behavior in a given amount of time, you make a tick mark on the sheet, and you maybe make some notes here and there. But as you start tracking all these behaviors, what happens is you start to get this snapshot of what the animal's behavior looks like over time, and how many of these behaviors occur under what circumstances. There's an expression amongst ethologists is that they don't really trust someone's ethograms until they have 1,000 hours of field work and have done these filled out ethograms for over 1,000 hours in the field. That's why we call it 1,000-Hour Eyes. When you have 1,000-Hour Eyes, your ethograms can be trusted. Looking at little things like that inchworm back that don't come up so easily for people to see become more apparent later on. So let's take a look again at Ann Tyson and Diesel. Watch as you see Diesel. Remember, he starts to change his pull. She adjusts her lead, allowing for that. And then as he goes, you see him, as he goes to the left, he comes back and he starts to make a circle. So here's the swing to the left as he wants to go off and compare on the sides and see if there's anything there. There, he's going that way. Notice he went right first a little bit and then came to the left. There's the circle. Another check that way as he works out, and then circle back. Notice that both circles circled back coming to him. Some dogs will circle forward and come back around. Again, he's checking off in there, circles back, circles actually almost around her. He's still evaluating. He's still trying to check and see if he can find a stronger spot. Can't find it, and he's back off and working on the track. And we go from there. All right. So is the screen still up there? We're still there? Okay. So you're looking how big this thing is. If you notice on that video, the very first move he made to the right, I almost forgot about that, but you see it right here. Here he is, he loosens up. Quick move to the right. Nope, not that way. Then he goes back, not a full circle. So you may see that precursor behavior. So you're going to look at how big the swings are, how big the circles are. What are they trying to compare? He may be just trying to run over here to see it because he's an experienced dog. He knows there's going to be collected scent along there that he can compare and see it might go that way or might be there just to confirm what he's doing. I don't know. I can't read a dog's mind. I just know that I see it a lot. You also look where that change, where the circle is in relation to the wind. Very often, you'll see dogs tend to circle more to the downwind side because the scent as it's blowing off of you is getting deposited there. So they work to the downwind side, come back, and then other dogs you'll see will actually circle more to the upwind side. So like if you're running a track crosswind, so the wind is, as you're moving forward, is, let's say, blowing from your right to your left as you move forward along this leg of the track, dogs will tend to work to the downwind side of the track and then come back up to the track line. Some dogs will actually go across the track line, realize they're out of it, and instead of just pulling themselves back, will circle a little bit. And sometimes they'll pull themselves back a bunch of times, and then other times they've gone too far and they catch themselves and circle back. So realizing that may be just the way they process it, but a lot of times the movement to the downwind side for circling is done to go sample things that are downwind obstructions that will catch scent. And those can be anything from a crack in the pavement to rocks, to small bushes, to trees, to buildings, anything that is an obstruction to the wind, because scent particles can collect there. Because you got to remember, those scent particles are really tiny. You know, they're 0.07 micrograms. They're shaped like a cornflake. They're largely skin cells that come off, along with droplets of sebum and sweat that get blown, they rise off your body with the thermal currents off of your body, and then they get carried by the wind. Some drop pretty close to the track line, others fall off there. A trailing dog is going to get that and follow all that stuff that drifts down where and use that to tell it who walked where. If you have a tracking dog that works tight to the footsteps, because that's what your sport dictates, or that's what you train and that's what you're looking for, then very often you're going to see a dog that's not going to deviate very far from those. They're going to rely more on the ground disturbance to tell them where the track goes. My experience is that dogs that use the trail are better scent discriminators, and dogs that stay really tight to the footsteps are better as accurate trackers, going right on top of things. And they may catch a piece of evidence that a trailing dog might miss. Everything's about trade-offs. I'm not saying that one's superior than the others. You just should be knowledgeable of what you're willing to give up to get what you want in whatever style of operation you've got. Another reason a dog will circle is because they've lost it. So if they overshoot a turn, you'll see a lot of dogs will make a circle trying to resolve the loss of track at that turn. Or if there's a gap for any reason. For example, it's been run over by a bunch of cars and now it's all blown over the place. And I can show you that on a different video sometime. But the important thing to remember when you're looking at this is that we can't read the dog's mind at the time they're doing it. So we take the information they're giving. So later on, if you lose track and you want to see if maybe you can help that dog recover, it's not a bad idea to go back in, use your track map to take you back a little bit beyond where that circle was, or a head swing was, so that you can give that dog an opportunity to reprocess it. Don't force the issue in the moment. Let the dog take you where its nose tells it should. But if you're starting to come up dry and you want to go check something, that's probably about as good a spot to check as any I can think of. And all of these things that we're talking about involve comparison. This dog is playing a hot and cold game. That scent plume that we showed on the earlier slide is representative of the way scent works. It doesn't come off as a uniform cone. It comes off and it billows, and it's stronger in some spots, weaker than others. And generally speaking, dogs are working from oldest to freshest on a track as they move forward, as they move in the direction the track layer went. And they're looking for that stuff. But sometimes the environmental conditions can make it seem like it's going in the wrong direction. You'll see dogs check, and they'll check different things around there. Am I right? Am I wrong? And the more reliable independent workers are good at making these comparisons and making a decision about where they want to go. They reassess this track moment by moment as they proceed along it. Dogs already know how to do this. We're not teaching them how to track. They can do it. They can do it on any urban surface you want if they chose to. They just never they've never thought there was any value in doing it the way we want, when we want. Just by working on this process, we can teach our dogs to go ahead and follow a scent the way we want, but it's not critical that it has to be our specific way and has to look a certain way, unless that's what your sport dictates for points. Crabbing, this one's going to be artificially set up. As you know, we use the HIT system. hydration intensified tracking training, which involves spraying water on the ground and putting treats on the ground initially just as a head lowering exercise to classically condition the dogs to put their head down on the ground. Again, this is giving them a reason to do it. So you're going to see this dog crabbing pretty strongly here. Young German Shepherd. This dog was a little reactive and very connected with the handler. If you notice this posture, as she goes down there, she has at least 3 and sometimes 4 legs on one side of the track. This is not a very biomechanically efficient way to work, and this is not a true track. Again, this is a head lowering exercise. But as a dog proceeds, once they start to have faith that this is going to work, the track will pay off, they will tend to straighten out. And that straightening out, let's see if this goes any further here, if I get up here. And you notice dog actually begins to straighten out a little bit farther. Oh, we're at the end. Okay. But crabbing is, if you think about it from the perspective of somebody judging dogs in the ring, they don't want to see crabbing on a conformation dog because it indicates an imbalance and drive between at least the 4 legs. Generally speaking, there should be a nice balance between the left and right sides of the bodies and between the front and the back to give the dog a nice, smooth, biomechanically efficient movement. Crabbing by definition means that something's not doing this. And I liken it to the dog has this oblique forward movement that's created because there's this internal conflict in which the body is saying, go, 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 but the nose says, whoa, whoa, whoa. The food treats are artificially slowing this dog down, amplifying the crabbing that we'll see otherwise. But when you see it, you'll see dogs, tracking dogs, crab this much when they start to process. They're moving along and all of a sudden, bam, their nose captures them, they slow down and the body swings off to the side. They start to process it, and then they'll straighten themselves out and continue on. Finally, the last of the 8 scent work indicators is head swing. Now, the way head swing looks for, I sometimes call it a nose anchor. And if you've ever seen what happens when a boat is moving and it hits the end of a line, the bow just pulls around with it, or whatever end of the boat is attached to the anchor. The whole point of this is that it's about perpendicularity, suddenness and perpendicularity of the movement. How fast that dog's head just whips around, and it generally tends to be perpendicular or pretty near perpendicular to the path of motion, the direction in which the dog is moving. And sometimes it isn't a full head movement, but you'll see a head pop. You might want to remember where that head pop is. I can't tell you how many times on a track I go back to where I saw a head pop, and that's where a turn was that we missed, or that's a spot that the dog had to resolve, or a piece of evidence that we missed and they picked it up later on. And be aware where the wind is, because head pops that are in the direction of the wind may indicate that your person or your article or something like that is upwind from you. In other words, off to that side, but momentum carried the dog past it and it doesn't realize it at the time that was worth following up on. So that's why you bring it back to that spot. And if the head pops to the downwind side, you're probably going to find a downwind obstruction, something there that will collect scent that caught that dog's attention as you go by. Boom, right there. You see that? He's arcing along smoothly, bam. And then the head just makes the whole body turn and move around there. And that's one where you get follow-up. The difference between a head pop and a true head swing is the follow-up. When it's a head swing that really takes that dog in that direction, the follow-up, they're probably going to process it and come up with an answer. But if it's just that head pop, you won't see the follow-up, but you still want to remember where that was because you might want to come back and check on it later. So we're going to wrap up the 8 scent work indicating behavior component. And now we're going to talk about the video analysis piece. And I'll try and get through this. There's math involved, But the long story short is your video camera is your best friend. It never lies. It always tells you the truth. It allows you to do this at your own pace. They don't get bored. And that video camera is the most powerful tool you can take use of this. My one regret is because I'm still working right now, I can't use videos from my own work from my department because of our public disclosure laws and our department's rules about videos taken during the work hours. So the videos I've got are older. When I retire sometime in the next year or two, you'll see better quality videos that we can come out that will show these things more closely. Or if we ever do a workshop in your area, you'll see we'll do it live right there in front of you. And what you'll see is you will think you saw something. And then when the video comes up, you'll see, ooh, that was different than I thought it was. And the reason this is powerful is the CyberVision effect. And CyberVision was a program that was out in the late 80s and early 90s. And they actually had VHS tapes. And I'll explain it to you. I was a coach for a Little League baseball team. Halfway through the season, two of our middle of the road players all of a sudden were either on base, or, they were getting on base at every at bat. They either got walks or they made good contact with the ball, got hits, and they were making it to first base every time. And I couldn't figure it out. So after one of the games in which both of these guys did that, I talked to one of them's mom and I said, hey, Penny, what's up with Ian? He is getting on bat every time. It's awesome. I just love this. And she goes, I don't know. He doesn't practice anymore than what practice you give him when he shows up for practice. And I said, wow, it's just amazing that, both Ian and Jim are just knocking the ball every time they're up. She goes, well, I don't know, unless it's that CyberVision thing. So I said, CyberVision, tell me more. So I go to their house and they show me a system that was amazing. It was a videotape in which you watched a baseball player take with beautiful, perfect Ted Williams swing, just the perfect mechanics. And you watch that person swing the ball perfectly every single time, making contact with the ball. You watch it from the first base side, from the third base side, from the catcher's position, from the pitcher's position. You would watch it from a helmet camera, watching the ball come in, and they'd slow it down, and you could see that ball slowly make contact with the bat, and they would gradually speed it up until you saw it faster. All this was on VHS tapes. And you'd watch it over and over again, because by watching that stuff, you started to see that picture and then were able to look for that picture when you were presented with that scenario in your own life. And lo and behold, it worked for these guys. It was amazing how much their hitting got better. Now, maybe it was the CyberVision itself, or maybe it was just that they became more mindful about it, but I know that the system worked for them. They didn't get any more practice than anybody else, but their performance improved. Had they practiced even more, who knows what they could have done. But the interesting piece on it was they isolated the elements. They isolated the stance, the swing, the eye following the ball, the eye watching the contact and the follow through of the bat. And then, actually how you stepped off from the plate. And so, their argument was that basically incoming images were converted to neuromuscular memory for you, shortcutting the path to creating your own neuromuscular memory, what we call muscle memory. I don't know whether it actually worked that way or not. I know that the system shifted from baseball to golf and tennis and stayed there because I think there's actually more money in golf and tennis, and that's kind of why they stayed there. I don't know, but it's pretty powerful. So I decided that combining this with McKenzie's 8 work indicators might be something worth trying. And we started out just watching the tape at least 3 times, but actually you can watch it a lot more. But first, you're just going to watch it for an overall impression, and then just watch the dog. And another time as a trainer, I'm just going to watch the handler and see if the handler is influencing the dog in any way. And that will help you a lot. Don't get me wrong. You'll see stuff that you would miss otherwise, and you can notice it. But the power comes when you start to look at this in a more granular way. Because if you start looking at this, you start looking for the interaction between the dog and the handler. And you also look, the relationship between the chain behaviors, but you're going to, more importantly, look for those 8 scent work indicating behaviors. When you do this, you may watch this thing up to 9 times, once for that overall impression, and then once for each of the 8 scent work indicating behaviors. Once for pull, once for nose height, once for tail carriage, once for breathing, once for cadence, once for circling, crabbing, and once for head swing. And each time you're just going to look and say, did that occur when the animal was in or out of scent? Now, this is best done when you're in training, on a training track, and then come back later on and you look at this. Record one of these, record one of these sheets for every track you do. Then you can build a database, because if you take one of those sheets and you write down when the dog is in, what it does when it's in and out of scent on each one of those, you start to go ahead and amass a bunch of data. You can take that data and turn it into information for yourself. If you just count how often an indicator appears and divide by the number of searches, you get an indicator of reliability. So it looks kind of like this. Let's say that a dog is searching or doing tracks, and when it's resolving that thing, it's out of scent, and then all of a sudden it's in it again, it closes its mouth. And let's say you notice that it does that 18 out of 20 times. On, you do 20 tracks, or there's in 10 tracks, you see 20 times where the dog recovers and gets back into scent, you see it close its mouth. Then realize that 18 out of 20 means a 90% indicator that that dog is coming back into scent. You see that low, wide sweeping tail while in scent happens 15 out of 20 times. Well, 15 out of 20 is 75%. That's a 75% reliable indicator. And let's say you have a dog that critters, but it never critters when it's on the track. It only, like, when the track's weak and it gets kind of tough, and all of a sudden there's this really nice fence post over there or fire hydrant. Let me go smell that for a little bit. Oh, wow, that smells so good. Oh, wait a minute, we were on work. Okay, let me get back to this again. If it never appears while the dog is in scent, then it's a 100% reliable negative indicator. If he's crittering, he doesn't have it. You see some dogs will critter and then get right back onto the track. It doesn't apply to them. But for other dogs, it doesn't. So, and it may be that when it's, when it's hot on the track, it doesn't do it. But when the track's a little weak, he does critter. You're going to have to figure this out for your dog. So once you figure out how often those things happen, you can create your own Pareto chart of this. The Pareto principle is basically the 80-20 rule. Basically, 20% of the indicator is going to yield 80% of the info. Those are going to be the go-to things that you're going to see in your dog more often than not. A lot of time it's going to be changing nose height and circling, crabbing, something like that. You'll see these things happen more often than not. And you'll see the important part of this, don't just do this for when the dog is on scent, because you need to know the ones where they're out of scent, because this is the make or break skill. Learning to read the negatives when the dog is out of scent or it's starting to get weak helps you work as a teammate with your dog, so that when the dog comes back and finally says, I got nothing, maybe you can go in that mental track map to find that spot that you saw before the dog gave you an indicator, and lo and behold, the dog can now say, yep, we got it, we're back on it again. If you just concentrate on learning the 20% of indicators that give you 80% of the indication that you've got, you're going to wind up getting to be a much more effective dog handler. Now think about this. If you do this first pass and you get those 20% of indicators, you don't have to learn everything you're doing. You just really need to focus, get really good at reading those 20%. And you get so good that you can catch those all the time. Great. Once those are indelibly etched in your mind, because you've looked at them on videos so many times and seen it, done it, and recorded it, and been mindful about it enough to create these forms, then when the time comes that you go and you start looking at the rest of them. So now you've got 80% of your scent work indicating behaviors you haven't really focused on, but that 80% now becomes a new body, and 20% of that 80% yields 80% of the remaining information. So if you learn this for the first two 20% chunks, if you learn 40% of your dog's scent work indicating behaviors, you're getting 96% of the information that dog gives you. That's powerful. that makes you a really effective reader of dog scenting behavior. So in the end, this is about realizing this is a skill that you can build for yourself. Scent work indicating behaviors are discrete and unique to your dog. They are readable. You can analyze them. Just as important as knowing the positive is understanding your dogs, the way your dog manifests negatives when it's out of scent. Use video to help you build your scent work indicator database, and you are going to get very, very good at this. I'm basically done. I have nothing more to say on this. If you have more information, you can get a hold of me at proactivecanine.com, or you can get a hold of me through Wayne, and we can work on this. But I love sharing this information. I wish this was a more interactive forum. We'd have a chance. I'll stay on the line if Wayne has an opportunity, wants me to talk with anybody on it, or you want to chat. But basically, if you try this and it doesn't work for you, that's okay. Figure out what you need to adjust. Don't abandon something that doesn't work right away, because the J curve of change says in the beginning, you're going to have to struggle a little bit to kind of get the hang of it. And then once you get good at it, the new procedure will help you out. If you have any questions, you can get a hold of me at steve@proactivecanine.com. That's just proactive as a single word with canine, letter K, number 9 attached to it, proactivecanine.com. If you have any questions, I look forward to hearing from you one way or the other. Thank you for your attention and have a lovely day. I'm still here. If anybody else is, can you hear me? I don't know. I know Wayne was not in a position to be able to hear this right up front as we're going. He was driving. Thank you.
Yeah.
Licia?
Thanks from London. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Yep, from Australia. Awesome, thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear from you. Let me see if I can stretch this out and see all of you all.
I think that's find that the hardest thing is to get confidence in myself to learn the scenting behaviour, so I know when the positive and negatives are coming.
How so, Emma? How do you mean?
So I feel sometimes that I know what my dog's doing, but so the people that are shadowing would probably pick up more information.
So, you know, one of the things that we do with our handlers in our unit to help them learn to read their own dogs is actually have them do this procedure on somebody else's dog.
Oh, awesome.
A dog with which they're not familiar, because it forces them out of the thing that's become so commonplace to them, they can't articulate the discrete components of it.
Oh, I see.
So you might try that. And the other thing too is try and teach this to somebody that knows nothing about it. So go find somebody, take video of your dog doing some work, do your analysis of it, and then show it to them and ask them what they see. And then you can walk them through the process of looking at the video and looking for each of the scent work indicating behaviors as you go down there. And in the process of teaching them, you're reinforcing this in your own mind, and you're building the capacity to articulate it. And we can't articulate things unless we're mindful about them. Make sense?
Yeah, I think that you're right. I think that's the hardest thing is I can see in my mind, but then like you said, the articulating is the thing. So that's great. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, you know, and if you're in the UK, I'd get a hold of Robert Hewings and see if he's got any. I know he takes a slightly different approach, but he's got a really rocking program going on. So
that's
Thank
Robert
you.
Hewings.
Robert Hewings, the UK College of Scent Dogs.
I'll have a look.
He has a new book out too. It's really good.
I'll look for that too.
Any other questions? Anybody else got anything else?
No, but thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Marianne. Appreciate it.
Steve, it's Karen from Sydney, Australia. I was just wondering, the session was fantastic. I loved it. I was just wondering though whether you might be able to send along the slides. I tried to write down the details, but there was so much information I had a bit of trouble getting it.
I can send let's see. If you send me an email
Yes.
to steve@proactivecanine.com, I'll ship you a PDF of the handout.
Oh, fantastic.
And you're free to use this information, and just with attribution. Just say where you got it. Just as I credit Steve McKenzie, I ask that you credit me as the source that you got it. That way, if somebody they want to blame somebody, you can point the finger and send them to me and say, this is Proc.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a good time.
Stay safe.
Every day.